can do this. Whew. A couple of months later, I started getting responses from people across the country saying that they wanted to participate in the Buffalo Soldiers trail retracing event. So we were constantly having meetings and trying to determine the best way to make this happen. At one of our meetings, the National Park Service out of D.C. reached out to me and said, "What can we do to help you?" And I said, "Nothing. Just have the parks open." That was the only thing I said, just have the parks open. They were like, "Yeah, we can do that." Who would have known a few months later, the parks were shut down. And I said, "This is a conspiracy." They heard about this event and shut it all down. But then I reached out to Kelly and Rick, and I said, "We have to keep this going." Kelly said, "We will make this happen." Even though I had some doubt, Kelly kept pushing me, saying, "This will happen." I reached out to Shelton Johnson at Yosemite, and I said, "Shelton, what's the best way to make this happen?" And Shelton said, "Teresa, it does not matter the mode of transportation. Make it happen." Because I wanted horses, people hiking, people on bikes. I wanted everybody in any type of mode to make this happen. And Shelton, and Shelton said no. Make it happen. Use the easiest way possible. So at one of our meetings, Robert Hanna, the great-great-grandson of John Muir, came to one of our meetings, and he asked if he could participate. And I was like, "What? Yes." and we were talking about, we didn't know how we could make this happen transportation-wise. And he said, "Buses." I'm like, "Oh yeah." And the thought was put out there. So after meeting after meeting after meeting, we finally got everything in place. Literally 2 days before the event was supposed to take place is when everything came together. And we had people across the country fly into town to participate in this event. We had over 200 participants come in to participate in honoring the legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers. And the entire time, my response was, all these people who are gathering from what was supposed to be a small event goes to show the respect that people have for the Buffalo Soldiers. And that's how that happened. And that's how it was born. And it was a thought between Kelly, between myself, between Outdoor Afro and all the other rangers. We had a concept, we had an idea, and we knew that with community, not with agencies, although agencies came on board to show their support, the Sierra Club, the National Park Conservation Association, Yosemite Conservancy, all these groups came in and said, "Let us help you." And we made it happen. But it was a thought first. So never let people tell you what's not possible. You have to live your dreams. And with African American National Parks event, people from Hawaii, Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club in Hawaii, went out and did their thing. The Buffalo Soldiers here in California joined us. Over 70 motorcycle members went into Yosemite with us. And it was bigger than I had imagined it to be. But I'm thankful for so many people that came together to make it happen. Outdoor Afro, the founder Rumap. Just all the words of encouragement and the support is what made this event happen. So next year, we are doing it again. I have not determined the date yet, but it will be in June. We are retracing the trail from the Presidio into Sequoia. And those plans are soon to start up with Kelly and Rick and the people at Sequoia people were coming to me saying, can your organization do it? I don't have an organization. It's the people across the country that made this happen. Each individual that went out into a national park, over 3,000 participants, over 34 national park units were visited. A lot of these people visited a national park unit for the first time. And for me, that is amazing. And that's what this event was all about. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to ask for, I think everybody at the table went on a trip, so. Personal something that Teresa magically said to you. Why? Let's just start with you. Why you decided to take the trip.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Felicia Goldwire. My biker name is Daffy, and I'm with the National Association of Buffalo Soldiers and Troopers Motorcycle Club. And really the story about the retrace, as far as my participation, it actually starts back in 2006-07 when I first joined the organization. We actually received word that there was another organization that was planning a retrace event, and we were very excited to be able to participate in it. Unfortunately, that event never came to fruition, so we were very disappointed that it didn't come off as the organizers had planned. So fast forward to 2013, and Teresa, in her infinite wisdom, is planning another retrace. And of course, we were very excited and happy to be able to join. And so several of our members participated in some of the meetings, and we were very excited, like I said, to get on our iron horses and honor the Buffalo Soldiers. They rode from the Presidio in San Francisco to Yosemite. It took them about 13 days. And we were very pleased to be a part of that event because that's what we do. I mean, we go out on our iron horses and ride and represent the Buffalo Soldiers. So it was just a real honor and a pleasure to be a part of the event.
Yes, so I've been asked to speak here today in wearing two different hats. One hat as a photographer, which we're going to, but other hat as a mother. And so my children are actually at grandma's house in Atlanta. And so I asked them to email me some thoughts. So I'm going to read a little bit what they had to say about, sort of the trip and why they came. My daughter Micah says, the trip for me was cool. The trip I'm talking about was the Buffalo Soldiers Trail. Anyways, it was cool because Outdoor Afro, I guess, advertised to a lot of different kinds of people from a lot of different backgrounds. Someone like me who probably would not have gone to Yosemite otherwise, even though they probably would have liked to go. Buffalo soldiers, bikers, and the people who would have gone by themselves. Basically the Outdoor Afros. So I'd like to thank the people who put it all together and also my mom who made it happen. Thanks to Rue for basically being everyone's chauffeur. And then my other daughter, Cammie, says, Yosemite wasn't what I thought it would be. I thought it would be campfires and singing and marshmallows, but it wasn't really any of that. Most of the excitement happened throughout the day when we were just walking together. It wasn't less fun, just a little different. All in all, I really liked the trip and would love to go again. And I asked her, I sort of said, well, what about the walk? And she said, the walk for me was exciting because I learned a lot about everyone there. They told stories and jokes and things like that, and I felt really safe. So that's Cammie and Micah. And I just have to say as a mom, part of the African-American story in this country is a story of displacement. We don't always get to own the places that we moved in. And we don't always get to stay in the places that we moved in, or make decisions on a citywide or a statewide or a federal level about which buildings will get torn down or which buildings will be preserved, how culture will be practiced, where it will be practiced. And so traveling somewhere like Yosemite is really amazing because nature gives us this opportunity to have a constant, to have a place that doesn't change no matter what. And it was really powerful to me that you know, I sort of knew that in the back of my head. Like, I had actually gone to Yosemite as a child, and had taken a trip to Yosemite 3 years ago through Balanced Rock Foundation. They do every year a Women of Color trip to Yosemite. Actually, they're doing it again in August. There's still some spaces, balancerock.org. But I went on that trip with a group of women, and I really wanted to bring my kids because I wanted them to have that kind of connection to grandparents, to future generations, with something in California that we know will not change, right? No matter what happens in Oakland, what happens in the Fillmore, whatever changes in terms of our family history in the cities, the family history in the country, in the national parks has this thread that goes through. So that's why.
How old are your girls? The girls in
12 girls, 20 girls.
Okay, Billy, your turn.
Hello, my name is Billy Knapp, son of Albert Afro, and what really wanted me to go on this trip, well, I heard from my mom, oh my God, we're going to Yosemite. And I thought in my head, black people, nature, this is going to be a good trip. So, I was really excited because all of my life, I really wanted to go to Yosemite, see the outdoors, experience everything with nature and black people, family, and fun. So I'm really thankful for Lisa to make this idea and make it blossom so that all of us can enjoy what she has to provide. So, ever since we started at the Presidio, it was cold, taking speeches, kind of boring at first.
Presidio
But
parties.
I still was very excited that I get to see everybody smiling, and I knew that later today I'm going to experience the great outdoors.
Well, Charlotte Parker, and I guess I haven't been giving the last names, and I don't know if anybody else did. I couldn't remember that, so I'll get it out so that people know that you have more than Teresa, so you have other names too. Charlotte, you're an outdoor enthusiast, and you're a member of the group. Yeah. So tell me, why did you probably had no choice, but why did you go? Why did you take the trip?
Well, at first I'll say, I've been to Yosemite many times, and it's just always a beautiful place, but I always like to experience new angles of my trips, and this one was special to me because I really didn't know a whole lot about Buffalo Soldiers, and it was limited to, a song, and when I would go to Yosemite, I would see that there was this person, Sheldon, who was doing these talks on Sunday. I'm like, I can never go because I gotta go back to work on Monday, so I can't stay at Yosemite on Sunday night. And so I'm like, one of these days I'm gonna get to Yosemite and I'm gonna hear what this man has to say. And this was years ago, so who knew I would ever actually meet him? So that was awesome. And I actually thought, oh, he's gonna be this old man who's like, I had my own images about what that was like. It was really so cool to be able to go on this trip and to gather the knowledge that I got, which was a main reason to go on the trip. Like I said, I've been used to it, but to get it from this perspective and be with people who I can see common reflection with was just an awesome experience, because often when I go, I'll see people from all over the world, but I don't necessarily see people from my neighborhood. And it's nice to be able to have that kind of kinship with people and to gather that kind of knowledge and to take walks and along the way get an understanding of how I'm important in this place, as opposed to I'm just kind of hanging out in somebody else's space. And to also actually hear that too, spoken to me, was really affirming. And so that was a tail end of my experience of having gone there, but the getting there was just because it was just so compelling, and I just wanted to know more and be in community.
Thank you so much.
Well, Felicia, you have a few stories to tell. You can tell us more about you and the bikes and how you got bikers interested, in the greater outdoors other than just riding on the pavement. So you talk about that a bit, and then you also have the second interest, which is photography.
So, I'm supposed to talk a little bit about our organization and how our connection to the Buffalo Soldiers. So, our organization was actually founded in 1993 by Ken Dreammaker Thomas. He was a police officer out of Chicago, and he wanted to create a motorcycle organization that would promote a positive image of motorcyclists. Because I'm sure some of you have seen or heard of kind of the dark side of motorcycling. I guess what would be called the one percenters, the Hells Angels and so on. Well, Ken wanted to flip that around and show a positive aspect of motorcycling, particularly for African Americans, African American youth. So he founded the organization. He is a student of history and was very interested in the Buffalo Soldier history. So that's really the connection between the motorcycle club and the Buffalo Soldiers. So we have 100 chapters across the United States. We have 9 here in California. We have soldiers from all different walks of life. We have police officers, we have doctors, lawyers, we have just, all different races, creeds, colors that you can imagine. Most of us all of us enjoy motorcycling. I got into motorcycling back in 2009. I've been riding for about 5 years now. And I have to be honest with you that when I joined the Buffalo Soldiers, I knew nothing about the Buffalo Soldiers. And I'm very honest about that. It wasn't until I joined the organization that I learned the history. That's part of what we need to do or have to do as members of our club. We have to be able to share the history with others because we are challenged and asked about the history when we're out in public. As I mentioned, we have 100 chapters all across the United States, and our mission is really to, one, promote the history of the Buffalo Soldiers. As Rick Penn mentioned, we do good in the hood through community service. We participate in rides, for example, to support the Make-A-Wish Foundation, the Pediatric Brain Tumor Foundation, and we also give out scholarships to high school seniors. So we do quite a bit of service in our communities. And not just in California, but all across the United States. Work like this is going on by motorcyclists. In addition, we love to ride, obviously. We are having our convention. If any of you are in the Houston area next week, we will be there from July 23rd to the 27th. We are having our big convention. There'll be over 1,300 Buffalo Soldier males and females down there. Yes, we will be sharing the history, but we'll also be having a really good time. As I mentioned, there are 9 chapters here in California, and we will be riding our motorcycles from California to Houston, Texas, for the Buffalo Soldier Convention. And we do that in honor of the Buffalo Soldiers. Now, a lot of times I get questions like, isn't it hard to ride that long and that far? Yeah, but wasn't it hard for the Buffalo Soldiers to ride that long and that far? Yeah. So we do that in honor of the Buffalo Soldiers. And like I said, if you're in the Houston area next week, come on down. You're going to have a really good time. Thank you.
Ask an open question, and I'd like you all to discuss it if you could, because then it will lead to the next thing, how we get more people into rooms like this. But why do you think there are so few African Americans that utilize our park system, not just Yosemite here, but that utilize our park system or don't utilize it across the country? So I don't know if you want to kick off as organizer.
Sure. I rather just talk if everybody can hear me. Sound like you do. There are several reasons people have stated to me personally as to why they do not visit national parks. We know the history. We know our history as African Americans in this country. We know of the lynchings that took place. A lot of African Americans have reached out to me and they have stated, I support what you're doing, but from stories that my grandmother had told me, the woods is not a place for us to congregate. And respectfully, they would decline to participate, and I completely understand that. I understand the history that is taking place, but I also understand the importance of us doing the work. I also understand the importance of us doing the work to change that assumption that people have in regards to being out in wooded areas. So that's part of it, fear. Another aspect is that we don't see ourselves out in these open spaces. We don't see ourselves as visitors in national parks. We don't see ourselves as employees in national parks. And some people feel uncomfortable in that setting. I've grown accustomed to it, but I'm changing it. I feel that we have just as much a right in these spaces as anyone, and it's just a matter of growing comfortable. So this event is to help that, to grow a sense of, or a level of comfort to where this event isn't needed for us to venture out into a national park. We can just take our family and go and not even think about what we'll see in regards to other faces, but just be comfortable enough in our own skin to know that we belong there. So understanding some of these fears is what I try to address with African American National Parks event. So,
Any other comments?
I'd like to add a little bit of what I went through as a kid in Virginia. I was born in the middle of the last century. I tell some of my fourth graders, how old are you, Ranger Ben? I was born in the middle of the last century, so I had 10 years of that, and do your math. So as an 11-year-old, if I wanted to go to the Shenandoah National Park, I realized that there is a tradition. If a tradition becomes established in your family, if your family always goes to the Grand Ole Opry, or if your family always goes to the Army-Navy game, then you will hear stories in your family about your aunts and uncles talking about what a great time they had. In my family, if I wanted to go to the Shenandoah in the 1950s in Virginia, my mom would first have to ask Dad, well, can you get time off? Okay, now I didn't get time off. Will the car make it to Shenandoah? Okay, it will make it. What if there is something mechanical difficulty? Will we find a mechanic that will be honest with us? What if one of the kids gets sick? Is there a hospital that will take the kid in Jim Crow, Virginia? What if we need to stay overnight because the kid's sick? Can we find a motel that will take us? So Mom had to, and Dad had to calculate all of these possible things that could go wrong. And as Murphy's Law would say, Mom would eventually say, well, let's just go down to the county park. That'll be nice. And so unless you have a tradition of people being able to do that, you don't have the inspiration and to want to repeat that. And we have to admit that Jim Crow took a great toll on people in this country for over 200 years. And that's been my experience.
Well, as much as I love nature, I feel like the thing that I can speak to is feeling some relative safety. That there's some places I can go, like a Yosemite or something that's like blindfolded, no problem, know how to get there. Venturing out though becomes a little bit more challenging mentally, because it's kind of like, who's there? Are they accepting? Is it okay? And generally I find if I do the venturing, it is okay, but it's getting past the messages kind of, speaks to your experience for me. Because growing up, that wasn't my experience. They weren't national parks we went to. They weren't parks we went to. We went to the lake and came home and, there wasn't a lot of venturing out. And it wasn't always safe to venture out of certain communities and neighborhoods. And so, this is one of the blessings of this organization actually is that, it kind of lends itself to creating a lot of permission for that. But I think that until people can feel safe coming out of their community, this process can be a little challenging, but I think that also with the message getting out there that can be possible, that can be a lot of shifts.
So I'm going to shift it just a little bit. I want to acknowledge the history, but also I had a conversation with Drew Mack, founder, about Giraffe. And I'll never forget her saying, I'm going to quote her, she said, we have always had fishing and picnics and shit. Meaning that we as African Americans often have to use a language that is appropriate to our community, that encompasses our experiences, that may not look like other people's experiences. So while the national parks may not have, certain national parks, I'll say it that way, may not have felt like a safe space, I certainly grew up with my cousins in LA, an uncle who was at Will Rogers Park every Saturday. Cooking some food, playing some dominoes, and granted he drove his van what was a walking distance from the house to the park, and then parked his van by the park, and some of his friends would show up on their bikes and so on and so forth. But we need to embrace that as an outdoor experience. We need to embrace, going in the backyard and collecting lightning bugs as an outdoor experience, right? In the jar. They only show up every few years now, but they were there every year when I was a kid, right? So I think there's a piece of it, and a lot of us, especially here in California, have family members who still go fishing and went fishing as a way to make life more affordable, right? I went to, a friend of mine runs a really nice restaurant here in the city, went to a fancy dinner, right? That they had at the restaurant, and I had done a Kickstarter campaign for them. So my present for doing that Kickstarter was to go to this pre-fee fancy dinner, right? And everything they served was poor people food, And they talked about that, bless their heart. They said, look, we're serving oyster. And oyster is something that people traditionally in California would go and harvest themselves as low-income folks. We're serving, I don't even remember, it was like liver or something, some kind of breadfruit, or bread, what is it, sweetmeats, sweet bread, some kind of sweet bread, right? And I grew up with my mom cooking sweet bread, because she grew up as an African American in the 50s with no running water until she was 11, right? In this country, in Michigan. But, that's an outdoor experience. The fact that they grew corn on the property and had chickens, even though, everybody worked in Chicago and worked as accountants and stuff like that. So I think we have to expand our definition of African Americans in the outdoors, and as soon as we do that, as soon as we stop kind of looking to compare ourselves to what mainstream folk look like camping, or experiencing the outdoors, then we go, oh wait, yeah, we did go. We didn't go over here, but we went over there. We had our safe spaces and continue to.
Then I'll return to, let's see, Charlotte, you went with your sister.
Yes.
And that must be something, again, because you're going with somebody that you're close to.
Yes.
You're really honest with. So what did the two of you take away from that trip? And what would you suggest to people who are even thinking about doing this?
Like taking family?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I'll say, my sister wasn't the first person I thought of when I was going to take this trip. Because she had never gone camping before. And when I posed it to her, she was kind of like, somebody else was going to go and they couldn't go. And I was like, okay, well, I'll ask her, but I know she's going to say no. So. Because she's just not, she loves Yosemite, don't get me wrong, but not to be outdoors. because even the day of, I mean, she kept calling us like, okay, so there's no bears. How do you do that? And I was like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Don't worry, you know. And so I called her the night before. I just knew she was gonna be like, okay, you know, I'm not gonna do it. She's gonna give me some kind of excuse, something broke, you know, come in. And she actually was like, okay, I'm at Big Five, and I got my tent, and I got a bag. I mean, she went crazy. They love her at Big Five. She's going back, and she has gear up to here. It's incredible. She has she really, really liked it. She took to it. Now, I will say she didn't sleep that night that we were out there. Took her a while because every noise, you know. But she took to it, and she has really taken it to heart, and it's like, I'm gonna pitch a tent in my backyard, and you know, a whole kind of thing. And so I'm actually amazed at what doors it's opened for her to be able to see Yosemite in a different way, because for her, Yosemite was you go there during the day and then you go find a hotel at night, and then maybe if you go back in, you know, whatever, but you go find a bed to sleep in. And we actually went back since Outdoor Afros because we took another friend who had never been to Yosemite at all, and we hadn't intended to camp. We even got in a hotel room for her, and she kind of embraced the idea of camping, of being in the tent. I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? So we are trying to also continue to introduce people that we ordinarily think about it, because we figure there's safety in numbers, you know. But I was so enthused that my sister has taken to this, and that because I feel like if she can take to it, I can pretty much ask a whole lot of people that to take to it, and so yeah, it's just been awesome. And she couldn't be here today. She wanted to be here, but couldn't make it, and she has been like speaking the praises. I have to pull her back when she's shopping. It's like, oh, I need this, I need that, you know. And but you know, she's just loved it as well. So thank you so much.
First, you have to tell us about Kathy Williams, the only woman Buffalo soldier.
So how many of you know that there was a female buffalo soldier by a show of hands? Oh, wow. Usually when I ask that question, no one raises their hand, so it's really nice to see that there were some hands that went up. So, for those of you that don't know, yes, there was an actual African-American female buffalo soldier, the only documented female buffalo soldier that we know of. And her name was Kathy Williams. And I guess you're wondering, how was it even possible for a female to serve in the military back then? Because as you know, females were not allowed to serve in the military back then. Well, what did she do? She just disguised herself as a man. How was she able to do that? Well, back then, the criteria for joining the military was basically show up and, you know, and present yourself and you can serve, essentially. So she didn't have to go through the rigorous testing or physical, mental testing that they have to do nowadays. Basically, she showed up, she disguised herself as a man, she reversed her name, so she became William Cathay, and she joined up with the 38th Infantry. And there were only two people that knew of her secret. That was her cousin and one of her friends, and they served alongside of her in the 38th Infantry. So Cathay served for about 2 years. Most of the time, unfortunately, she spent hospitalized. She had a variety of illnesses, unfortunately. She was hospitalized 5 times over the time frame that she served in the military. It wasn't until the last time when they did a physical that they actually discovered that she was a woman. And so the doctor reported that to the post commander, and the post commander discharged her from the military. And Cathay, unfortunately, we don't know exactly where she's buried. We believe, at least from what the research that I've done, she died somewhere around 92, somewhere in there. In Pueblo, Colorado, somewhere in there. She doesn't have a gravesite, unfortunately, that we can visit and pay homage to her. And I have to tell you that as a female motorcyclist, if you know anything about motorcycle culture, you know that there aren't very many women that ride. I mean, there are a lot of women that ride, but there aren't a lot of women traditionally that ride motorcycles. It's usually and mostly a male-dominated sport. And so it's really an honor for me as a female to ride with the Buffalo Soldiers as a female Buffalo Soldier. As I mentioned, we have 9 chapters out here in California, and there are only about, I think, 6 or 7 females that actively ride motorcycles. And by actively ride, I mean ride from Sacramento to Houston to New Orleans to the East Coast. So it's really just an honor for me. And when I'm riding, I think about Cathay Williams, you know, because she was the only one. And a lot of times I'm the only one riding with a group of guys. And so for me, it's just really an honor to be a Buffalo Soldier, to be a female modern day Buffalo Soldier. Thank you.
Okay, it's your turn. You can just say that we've answered everything. We have not answered the key question. What do we have to do to increase the number of people visiting parks? And what do we have to do to get this bill through our almost non-functioning Congress? So, I have to sort of seem neutral. But anyway, we would love to entertain, your thoughts, your information, or certainly anything that would guide us to the goals of increasing visitation and to getting this bill passed. Or if you just want to know, do you think it was worth all of your prep time and your sister's prep time to go do this? Just questions like that are also important. Okay. Over here, saw your hand first.
I was just wondering if you had thought of bringing your African American and National Park Day to the president's desk as a national idea.
The president?
Yeah, he has the authority.
No. No, I haven't. This was supposed to be a small.
It's not anymore,
So
Teresa.
many people have embraced this as an idea, as a concept that can happen. I'm amazed by all of this, to be honest, that so many people have said, I want to go to a national park, that have never gone before. So it's somewhat surprising how it's taking off, and I'm encouraged by that. But no, I have not thought about reaching out to the president yet. Embrace it and roll with it.
Well, he's into doing things on his own.
Yeah, right.
Somebody to check. Is this something he could do on his own? Yeah. And with the help of this crowd and others? Yeah. Right.
I was also born in the middle of the last century. And my family, my parents both worked in Yosemite in the 30s and met there, so we went up there every year, so I'm kind of a child of Yosemite. Never any faces of color of any kind except white and human beings. And I went back to work just recently as a volunteer at the